Place in the Sun, Chapter 5. Trial at Karnak. The forest of stone columns rose all around Senmut, towering out of sight. He felt small. Even Kazwan, walking next to him, slowed when they entered the great hall. Shaven priests, draped in white linen, stood at the base of each column, waving pots of incense to purify the air. Senmut thought he should feel scared, or worried, or even sick. He should feel something. But he found himself wondering how the hairless priests removed their eyelashes. Odd, he thought, to be thinking of eyelashes now, when soon he could be dead. A guard grabbed Kazwan. "You must get in line with the others, old man. We have come to plead our case before the great and just God, Amun." Kazwan jerked his arm from the guard's grip. "Then enter by the chamber of Thoth." The guard pointed to a doorway. Kazwan grabbed Senmut's elbow and pushed past the guard. Inside, holy men fanned the air with great ostrich feathers. Senmut felt the skin on the back of his neck prickle. The golden statue of Amun seemed to breathe, its heart to beat. With arms folded across his chest, Amun looked down at Senmut. The god could look kind or stern, loving or vengeful, calm or angry. He held all emotion. Senmut knew his thoughts were a sacrilege, but he couldn't stop them. What of the sculptor who had created this living metal? What of the mere mortal who had molded a lump of gold into a living god? What marvels he could learn from such a man? A river of peasants flowed through the great hall to see Amun, the king of all gods. Many had waited hours in the heat for this moment. The royal guard herded them, prodding anyone who stopped. The guards were kept busy, for many paused. Senmut watched them. One peasant looked scared, another smiled, many cried. Each saw something different in the face of Amun. Kazwan fell to the floor at Amun's feet. He grabbed Senmut's wrist and yanked him to the ground. Then, with outstretched hands, Kazwan held the sacred scrolls of laws. "O spirit that moves all living things, hear your humble servant in defense of Senmut, who still bears the sidelock of youth." A priest stepped forward and signaled Kazwan to rise, but ignored Senmut, flattened to the ground in penance. "Senmut did not mean to bring the bird from the heavens," Kazwan said. "He was sculpting the image of Sekhmet, hoping to persuade her to use her healing power to drive a plague from his household. It was not the sacred ibis or the holy hawk, but merely a dove. We seek your mercy, O hidden one." The anguish in Kazwan's voice could be heard in the chamber long after his words were still. Several peasants turned to Kazwan, curious, but the guards pushed them along. Senmut pressed himself to the stone floor. He listened to the papyrus sandals scratching the stone as the hordes of peasants passed. They whispered like judges discussing his fate. Then the whispering stopped. The whole line came to a standstill. Even the guards paused in their duties to watch the great Amun. All waited for his judgment. Would the boy be pierced through by a spike and hang on the banks of the Nile? Or would Amun show mercy? Amun bent forward. The movement was so slight that later the peasants argued whether or not the statue had moved at all. A priest came from behind the statue and approached Kazwan, his hands hidden in the folds of his linen tunic. "It is the mercy of Amun that spares the life of the boy. It is Amun's wish that he serve his remaining sons in the gold mines of Nubia." No one moved. Even the fan bearers paused. The silence was like being buried in sand. Nubia. Death was more merciful. Only the worst criminals worked the mines. To work the gold mines meant to exist with the sting of the foreman's whip licking your back, the flies living off your wounds. Death came slowly, torturously, step by step, from starvation and thirst. Two of the royal guards came forward and picked Senmut up by his forearms. Senmut hung limp between the guards. They hauled him from the temple and through the streets. Senmut hung his head, watching his feet drag along the packed sand, surprised when they bled because he felt nothing. The guards up ahead shoved the peasants out of the way. The streets were overflowing. The parade had begun. Musicians banging tambourines led the way. Dancers followed in a swirl of sheer fabric. The guards pulled Senmut against the flow of the parade in the street. Senmut was so close he could have reached out and touched the paraders. He would never get closer, but Senmut saw nothing. Nothing but the blood of his feet trailing in the sand.